all hear me here? Can I get fries with that? All right. I'd like to thank Lisa and Paul for their introductions, and Stephen King, the other Stephen King, for the great book cover art. I'd also like to thank all of you for showing up tonight. It's great to see so many friendly and familiar faces. I want to say something about independent bookstores like Bookworks. I believe they fill a real need for people who love books. They're a great place to learn about new authors, like me. And it's very important that we all patronize and keep them going. Okay. Several years ago, I worked for a while in Hollywood, where I learned the fine art of the pitch, telling your script in 1 or 2 sentences. Here's mine. The Moon in Deep Winter is about a young man named Parker Sloan who returns to his family home in the woods of New England and discovers members of his family are plotting to murder each other. Think of it like Fargo meets the Brady Bunch. Tonight I'm reading from chapter 1, where Parker has arrived in his hometown of Rockbridge and gets a ride from the deputy sheriff named Alf Cooper. Parker's been away from home for the past 5 years. It's winter in the Berkshires. The trip east had taken 5 days across snowy interstates, past truck stops and fierce desert sunsets, the ghostly lights of distant mountain cities. In a diner outside Reno, he fell into conversation with a bristle-haired cattle feed salesman over the relative depth and quality of the Denver Broncos secondary versus that of his own New England Patriots. He had no strong feelings on the matter one way or another, but the feed salesman's belligerently expressed convictions fueled a sudden rage in him. The next thing he knew, his slice of pecan pie a la mode was dripping down the other guy's face, arms, and legs, and bodies were getting between them, breaking it up. In the end, no more than pride was hurt. Apologies made, all the passengers returned to the bus. The only lingering question being, would he be allowed back on too? A convincing show of contrition on his part, plus his last $50, persuaded the bus driver to overlook the whole squalid event. The feed salesman got off in Omaha. For the rest of the long journey, Parker kept quiet. In the hills of Vermont, the bus stopped at a railroad crossing alongside a farmer in a compact tractor and waited for the Central Maine freight train to rumble by. From his warm seat on the bus, Parker watched snow fall on the front end loader and the driver's John Deere cap. He shivered in sympathy. Any number of things could explain the pecan pie outburst. Looking down on the snow-covered farmer, he thought, I just need some time out is all. Alf Cooper was humming to himself as they came to the bottom of a steep hill, the last before the family house. Parker asked to be dropped off. But we just got this one last hill. Thanks, he said. I don't mind walking. Alf pulled over and parked by the side of the road, but at first Parker didn't move. Time was running out, precious seconds left in which to change his mind and keep on going, disappearing into Newfoundland perhaps, or adrift in the Arctic Sea. Not pleasant to contemplate, but at the moment not altogether out of the question. And it was now that Alf decided to get personal. So where you been? What you been up to? California, he said, as an answer to both. Nothing like this, I bet. He gestured at the snowbound landscape. Snow's been coming down hard since middle of last week. Gets worse every year, I think. Still, Parker didn't move, wondering if for some reason Alf wanted to come greet the family too. It didn't seem right to be handing out invitations, but he felt obliged to say something. Do you want to come to the house? The deputy sheriff's eyes widened as if he'd stepped on a nail. No, he said. Getting out of the car, Parker heard Alf grumble to himself over the crackling radio. Come in? I sure as hell do not. He swung the cruiser around sharply, sending Parker scrambling for safety, and headed back to Rockbridge. Time out. Even in sunlight, the air was bitterly cold. At the top of the hill, fields extended to wooded countryside a half-acre away. Closer in, the 2-story colonial house was bordered by a low stone wall. In the front yard, the same towering rock elm. Nothing else for miles around, all as he remembered it. On the porch, he blew warm air in his cupped hands and knocked on the thick oak door, ransacking his brain for memories of his mother and stepfather, happy and in love, children rushing up and down the stairs, Burke's elderly mother asleep in the rocker. He knocked again, remorse bubbling up in his chest. Eugenia was surely long since dead. He tried the door, open. Sunlight swept in, dancing on air. Hello? Anybody home? In the living room, there was the familiar covered sofa and polished glass end tables, a row of family portraits on the mantel above the fireplace. Home. He felt giddy with deja vu, like too much oxygen on the brain. A scraping sound echoed from somewhere in the house. He looked down the hallway. Mother, is that you? The kitchen was different, repainted, from bilge gray walls to a light summery blue, a mahogany breakfast table he'd never seen before. But the kitchen felt long uninhabited, as if a vast silence descended from the attic and second-floor bedrooms down to the clean blue space he was standing in now. A mausoleum silence, like death, he thought, bright, shiny death. Walt? Rita? More than 5 years had passed since he'd been in this house. Anything could have happened in that time. What if they'd moved out and nobody mentioned it? What if the furniture and appliances belonged to strangers, a family of strangers? There was that scraping sound, a distinct squeak of metal scratching wood. He followed it into the den where a weak light suffused the tall windows, falling on ceiling beams and the pea-green surface of a pool table in the center of the room. In the corner, the source of the abrasive noise, Eugenia Pratt Sullivan, a small woman in a black shawl and gingham dress, seated in the rocker and dragging a steel-tipped walking cane across the hardwood floor. Parker, leaning over to investigate, saw the cane nudging a hunk of aged mozzarella toward a wary yet fascinated field mouse. Come and get it, Mr. Mouse, the old woman said. Come get this nice piece of cheese. The mouse, a hungry-looking stray from the woods out back, cast a skittish glance up at Parker, while Eugenia lifted the